So for anyone that wants to tune in and check it out, we're going to be doing a discussion about advanced open water class. The advanced open water course, what it consists of, what you're going to expect or what you could expect during your advanced open water class. And we're all 3 different instructors, 3 different ways to attack or present the advanced open water course. And we're going to talk about what we like, what we don't like, how we do it, and stuff like that. So I'm on with Brian Mashad, Greg Levitz. So let's start. Okay, so your advanced open water. Your advanced open water class, I don't know, once again, let's go first night. First, what do you do, Brian?
Well, generally with my classes, Bert's taking care of the classroom stuff.
Yep.
So in that regard, I don't deal with a lot of the classroom. However, out on the dive,
there's always a however.
There's always a however. I get him in the water, so when we go for our dive, if it's someone I'm unfamiliar with, we're gonna go do a shakedown dive. Let me see how you are. I just want to know, how do you feel in the water? How comfortable are you?
So you're going to make sure that they can complete their basic open water skills. Maybe
Right.
It's been a couple of years since they dove. They have their basic. They think they can just jump into the advanced, and they're good to go.
Right.
So
okay. A while back, that wasn't my practice, and we'd get in the water and say, all right, here, I'm going to have you do this. We're doing this dive. You're doing these skills. And 10 minutes in, you're looking at them, you're grabbing them, you're like, no, okay, this isn't, let's go to the surface where we can talk, because this is not working well. So we stopped doing that.
Do you do that in the pool, or do you do that in open water?
Open water.
Okay.
Open water. We take them out and say, all right, look, we're going to go down, we're going to hit 30, 40 feet. Somewhere along the way, I may tap on you and say, show me clear your mask, show me clear your regulator. We're going to do, site survey and poke around. Let's go see what's there. If we're in the ocean, let's go look at the fish and the rocks. If we're in a, like Dutch Springs Quarry, let's go down to the school bus. Let's go down to the Cessna, that kind of thing. And just knock whatever rust you may have. Let's knock the rust off and let's get comfortable, because we're going to be together for a little while.
Okay.
How about that's how I like to start it.
Oops, I'm sorry. How about you?
Well, so I usually start with a buoyancy. Usually it's we meet up in a classroom, we go over some of the things in the classroom, what's expected. A lot of times they're coming in from other instructors, and so I like to have them bring all their gear in the first night and do a complete gear setup.
Yep.
And a complete, dangly check. I know it sounds kind of funny, but we're looking for things. We're looking for things that just don't seem right.
Yep.
And we're trying to. What I always did was I always tried, and Todd, you've been on plenty of those with me. Try to make sure that nothing is going to snag hazard wise. Getting rid of things. So we do a gear setup night, kind of an orientation of what we're going to do. And then if it's that would be like the first night, basically. I always find that a lot of times people on their first night don't even have the proper gear.
A lot of people are renting gear for advanced open water.
Yeah.
Not the best idea, because at that point you should have your own gear. You're more comfortable diving your own gear, diving gear that you're used to, diving gear that you dive the same all the time. So you're familiar with that gear completely.
Right.
So
it's the first time they're seeing things too. A prime example, like an SMB or something. They're not even, they maybe took their open water years ago. Yep. And they've never needed one on a dive. Even a regular dive float, what does one look like? I mean, a lot of times people are diving with with somebody else or off a boat, they've never actually used or dragged one along. So yeah, it's a complete gear setup night for us.
Okay, so your first night, and I'm sure Bert does this in classroom. He goes over all that stuff. So your first night is your gear configuration and setup. Make sure everything's squared away. So let's go. Do you also do a shakeout dive?
Yeah, so my shakeout dive is really more of a buoyancy dive.
Okay.
And then I'll tie that into a search and recovery navigation. So it depends. It could be freshwater, saltwater. It's usually with a little combination of it.
So let's pause right there for a minute, because we're gonna touch on the individual skills in each. So I know I'm a jerk. I'm a jerk. Okay. If you're coming to me for advanced open water, anything above basic scuba diver, I want you to be able to do all your skills. This probably comes from technical side of it, but I want you to be able to do your skills from a hover. I don't want you to be kneeling on the ground. I want you to be able to, real life situation, I'm mid-water and my mask gets kicked off. I want to be able to recover, clear, without flying to the surface or belly flopping on the ground.
Yeah.
So in your shakeout dive, do you require that of your students? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you not think it's a good idea? Do you give them a little leeway? Brian, what's your thoughts?
If I remember correctly, the S&Ps actually say that when we're doing the mask clearing and regulator clearing and recovery and all that, that we're kneeling on the bottom.
Okay.
For basic open water.
For basic open water.
Right. So if you're starting your advanced, and you want them to try to do that hovering mid-water, that's a new skill.
Okay.
So I don't require them to be able to do it hovering. At the beginning, at the end of basic open water or at the beginning of advanced, no.
Okay.
If I have a student who I think has a lot of potential and they're doing like every skill you throw at them, they just, it's there. There is no difficulty for them. Yeah, we may do something a little more challenging, like actually, thumb their mask so they have to fix it while we're swimming.
Gotcha.
They'll know ahead of time, hey, I may come over it and, do something like jar your mask, so you got to deal with it. Because the reality of it is that's how it's going to happen. So you're going to run into somebody, it's going to bump, kick, move, and now you got to deal with it. It's not like you were expecting to clear your mask. It's usually a surprise. So with those students that show promise in that regard, that when you give them the skill that's required and they hammer it and they don't have any stress from that, we may stress them a little bit by doing something like that. Or one of my favorite ones is giving them a mask that has a hole in it.
Gotcha.
And
so Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so most 99% of the students that I had from open water, when they went to advanced, they signed up for the advanced. They were already in that position. They weren't, for me, they weren't in that kneeling position. A lot of them start that way, but then over the course of like the open water course, they're ending in, and working on the hovering. And that's where they most of them have kind of forgotten all those basic techniques anyways. And so the first thing for me is that shakedown buoyancy class, where we're really trying to hone in on where should you be in the water column, either a dart like one dive, or pinned to the bottom of a dock. So we're looking at that, and and a lot of times it's a lot of times when they come with different equipment or new equipment, it's a challenge for them to really hone in on buoyancy. I need to make sure, and I think we could probably all agree that they're not going to mess up moving forward. That we can mess up in a shallow area and work on our buoyancy and where we need to be to progress onto those next series of dives.
Okay. So with that being said, do we incorporate a buoyancy class, or do we hammer on buoyancy while we're exposing these new or introducing these new skills?
Well, personally for me,
Yep.
it's a buoyancy class right in the beginning. That's the first thing.
Okay.
Then throughout the whole advanced course, whether it's navigation, night, or deep, or any of those, search and recovery, we're still practicing our buoyancy to make sure that we're consistent. I need to move my hands up because I talk with my hands a lot.
Brian, what do you think?
I agree with that. It's definitely a buoyancy class throughout.
Okay.
Just thinking about, this past summer, some of the advanced students that we had at Dutch, basically every skill we had them do,
Yep.
we had them maintaining a certain depth in the water column.
Okay.
And we know they completed the task correctly if they saw a certain object that was hovering mid-water.
Yep.
Like there's the helicopter at Dutch Springs that's floating in 30 feet. Well, actually, it's the Airbus now. But if you're navigating to it and you're not at the right depth from shore, you drop off, you take your compass reading, you have to maintain that depth or you'll swim over it, you'll swim under it and never see it.
Right.
So we hammer on buoyancy throughout while, okay, I want you to go do this. I want you to find that. We're going to do this dive during the day, and then I'm going to have you repeat that exact same dive tonight. So you've done it once.
Yep.
Hopefully it was successful. If it wasn't successful, then we talk about what the night dive is going to be. But if you do that dive successful during the day, well, that's the dive you're going to do at night, just to see how things change by just removing the sun.
Okay.
There is very much, it's knowing where you are in the water column, being able to deal with being globally aware all the way around you. Where's your body? Where are you? What direction are you headed in? All while trying to maintain that, at Dutch, the depth we use there is 35 feet, trying to stay right in that spot so that you can actually get to the items you're looking for.
So let's stay with your navigation that you just said, because that's a requirement, I believe, in any agency is navigation. So let's go over navigation and what they're going to be doing in a navigation phase, the navigation phase of their advanced open water course. So Greg, I already know what you do. So Brian.
Wow.
I get to torture so many people just because of the way I've seen Greg do a navigation portion.
Really?
Oh,
now
yeah.
I'm curious. Well, if we're out in the ocean, we don't have stuff that's hovering at depth that you have to hit at a certain depth. So we have them do a triangle, a square. We actually have them navigate, and so somebody's got to stand at the shore and watch the flag to see, is the flag making the appropriate shapes that we want them to make. We'll have them navigate to a point and back, and we will stand at the point and be like, all right, you're going to start here, and I want you to go out for 10 minutes, turn around and come back, and you need to be here at my feet within reason.
Okay.
If you're within a couple of feet of me, that's great. You're at the other side of the bay, you couldn't do an out and back, you know,
Right.
that sort of thing.
What
If
is
we're,
that noise?
what's that?
What is that noise?
Oh, sorry, that's me. Hold on. Is that better? Window air conditioner unit. So if we're at Dutch Springs,
Yep.
where there's stuff that's floating in the water, we will start from various points on the shore and say, look, you got to drop to 30, 35 feet, swim on this heading. When you hit the airplane, turn around, spend a minute, take a look at it. You're there.
Yep.
And then take a reciprocal course back. You should wind up at the dock.
Okay.
And we've had students miss the plane and hit the wall on the far side. We've had students hit the plane, look at the plane, come back, and wind up on the other side of the peninsula where the other docks are, or over on the other side where the goldfish like to hang out.
Yeah, that's a long walk, fully geared. Oh,
right? Oh, they usually will surface swim back, but yeah, but it either way, it's a challenging navigation because it's a long swim.
Yep.
And you're in the water column where you can't see surface, you can't see bottom. So it's very much relying on your depth gauge and your compass to get you where you want to go.
Okay.
And knowing that you're holding them correctly so that you're getting the right information off of them, that you're not tilted so it's locked, the compass is stuck in the position of the direction you're headed in, but
Yep.
meanwhile, you've drifted off a ways, and so those are the navigation things we like to do.
Gotcha. Okay, so knowing that I know how Greg does an advanced course, and knowing how he does the navigation portion, let me see if I remember this, because it's been a while since Greg and I teamed up. So he'll spend about an hour and a half on the surface.
On land.
On surface, I'm sorry, going over compass. So he'll go over and he'll explain reciprocal headings. He'll go over and have them look down at their compass, not look where they're going, and they have to do the triangle that they're going to do in the water, or the reciprocal course they're going to do in the water. They also do it on land.
Mm-hmm.
So I that was something I learned from Greg, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a very easy, very safe way, and a very convenient way, because if they do something wrong, you can literally talk right away. I don't remember if you did this in your advanced course, but this is an addition. I like to incorporate a spool or a reel.
That's actually part of my search and recovery.
Okay.
So so once we did our full navigation course, and that, once again, we were on land first for quite some time. Sometimes we're covered up, so we can't really see around. We have nothing, like a towel over our head. Once we finally made it to, and we would do triangles, a straight line heading and reciprocal. We would do a triangle and then a square.
Yep.
And the square could be a rectangle. It doesn't really matter. But once we got in the water,
it was a box-looking shape.
Yeah, exactly. We got down to the water. We all had dive slates with us, right? So we drew out the topography of the beach line and certain points that we can see, and so we know if there's a buoy, we'll write the buoy. We'll guesstimate how far it is out there. So we would take care of that, put that aside, because when we're doing heading and reciprocals and triangles, we're starting off with, well, how long does it take you to kick out to a known object?
Okay, so time out right there. how do you guys advise or teach to track distance? I was always taught, and I always go with fin kicks because my frog kick is pretty consistent,
Yep.
where I will travel roughly the same distance every kick for a pretty good amount of time.
So for me, Todd, there's a bunch of ways to do it, obviously.
Yep.
But the fin kicks is number one for me, and also arm spans. And so I would take a known length of line. If I knew that my spool was 100 feet, I'd stake it. And then I would have them use, the arm distance. So so it's super clear. If they're on the bottom, they know exactly how to figure out point to point, how long that is. And then the fin kicks, the same thing. It would be a kick and then a glide, and it would just be a kick, really, really fast. But we started out we've seen that, and we've seen that with our hands and feet. So.
Yeah, right.
I had to do that.
Yeah. But,
Brian,
and then,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it's funny because at the lake that we use, we laid out a course.
Mhm.
They knew that if they went out to just like you were saying, Brian, they knew that if they went out to a certain area, if they missed it, well, then their compasses, then they're off. The other big thing is making sure they understand to trust their compass.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really tough one for people to think. They don't, when they're above water, the compass, I see it moving, and I'm watching it. Well, underwater, you're typically not, you're typically not watching it 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of looking down, looking up, going to the next spot. But, so that's one part of it.
Okay, so just for that reason, there is why I introduce at least a spool or a reel in navigation, because in my mind, and I guess in my experience, that's the only way to guarantee I get back to the exact same spot I started.
Well, okay, so in the search recovery,
Yep.
we would do that absolutely. In the navigation, if you think about it, you don't need a compass if you have a line on it.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. So, and that's part of the search and recovery portion for me, where you can't see anything. You have to rely on your line.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Brian, since Greg said search and recovery, let's go search and recovery. What do you do? What do you introduce? What do you teach?
We show the using a line with a partner and doing like either the half moon searches, grid work depending on conditions, where we can put a line out, stake a line, and then do grid work off that. Generally it's one person sits, and so that the person searching starts swimming an arc because they've got 10 feet of line out. When they get to the 180 degrees, they'll give a tug telling the diver, all right, turn around, and spool out another 10 feet or whatever viz dictates,
Mm-hmm.
and start coming back the other way.
Okay.
And that's generally how we teach it as a 2-person. We'll have them do a couple of passes and then switch roles. And for a while at Jamestown, we used to put I had some steel triangles, not the best term, but I had 2 pieces of plate steel that I welded together into a 90 degree, and I had painted them into a dive flag.
Yep.
On each side. When we'd get there early, and we'd go drop 3 or 4 of them out in the bay in Jamestown. And they were laid out in a rectangular pattern.
Okay.
So we'd buoy one of them, send them out. All right, guys, here's your nav course. From here to here to here, find the dive flags that are underwater. And then for search and recovery, it was, all right, go find the dive flags and bring them up. Where they actually had to attach a bag, float it, and bring it back to shore.
Okay, so you do introduce and teach how to use a lift bag.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you got, Greg?
Yeah, so if it's search and recovery, absolutely same, very, very similar. I made up a box years ago, and the box had different lines attached, whether from super thin. It was about the box was like about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet, and it held maybe 20 different styles of line. And so it was really important for people to understand that during search and recovery, you actually might have to cut something. Surprise.
Okay.
And so what we did was we used to go down and actually try to cut it with, some people would come up with their dull knife and try to cut something that would never work, their scissors or their razor cutter. So we would show them that too. As far as we would do the patterns for search and recovery, same thing, whether it's the arc or it's a straight line shoot, if you knew where it was, an arc off of each one of them. A lot of times what we would do is we would set up a station where if we knew the beach line, because typically on a search and recovery, well, in our case, we'd go off a beach line. We'd stake out 2 lines and use a runner back and forth on the line itself. And that was another way to go about it. So you could send out 2 people. I have a spool that has like 300 feet, I believe, maybe a little less of number 24, thickness line, and it's marked at 10-foot increments. And so,
Yeah, I remember when you did those knots.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I learned that one from a guy in Mexico. So we would go out and then we would do the arc off of that beach, that arc line. This way we'd have, more eyes on the area. And that was always a good thing for us. As far as lift bag training, yeah, we had, we would always bring something, and it was usually either a couple cinder blocks that were out there, or it was an anchor, a little mushroom anchor, 20-pound mushroom anchor.
Yep.
Seemed to work pretty good. And then there was trying, as far as search and recovery, when we're teaching the line skill portion of it, it's how do you tie into certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Different ties. Okay.
And how not to get hurt when you're using a lift bag also.
You mean don't be right directly under it.
Yeah, like don't stick your face in it and blow it up your face. Yeah, things like that.
So okay, so search and recovery, a bunch of different ideas on how to do things, a bunch of different philosophies on what to do, how to do it, and what kind of searches you conduct, as well as what are you lifting up, what are you recovering.
Yeah.
Okay, so I forgot who touched on it earlier, but night diving. Once again, I know how Greg does a night dive, so I want to start with Brian, because I love hearing new ideas, new things. So, Brian, take me on a night dive. Take me through a night dive course.
A night dive course.
Yep.
So, like I mentioned earlier, if whatever we do for a night dive,
yep,
we like to have the students have done that dive in the daylight.
That dive or that area?
Yep. So.
Yep.
If we're doing Rhode Island,
yep,
we're doing a shore dive like that. That area, there's not a lot of areas to get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of ways to get really lost. So if we're diving all day there, if they're getting in 2 dives during the day, our night dive there is going to be fairly simple. We're drop in, we're going to head out a little ways. And the nice thing is, depending on the type of year or the time of year, there is.
Hi, Penny.
Hi.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Okay.
depending on the time of year, yeah. Well, depending on the time of year in Jamestown, the sea grapes bioluminesce.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get the group together, make sure everyone's okay. We'll circle up,
Yeah.
and then have everybody shut all their lights off. And it's usually really, really cool. If we're doing a night dive out there,
Yep.
we don't generally stress them too much. It's just, let's go out and enjoy a night dive.
Okay.
We've been out here all day. You've seen there's not a whole lot to see. We'll try to hug one of the shorelines generally, so that you get into the rocks and maybe you'll see some more sea life. That would be a Jamestown open water dive, a shore dive. In Dutch Springs, where there are things that we can go specifically try to attain, we will combine our night dive with navigation.
Okay.
You got to go find the Airbus. You got to go find the school bus without using the lines. That kind of thing. We will send them to find something while swimming mid-water column.
Gotcha.
And it's quite challenging. During the day it's bad enough, but you can at least kind of see around a little bit. You can see your partner. You can see divers going across. When you're going to the Airbus, if you are at the right depth, you're going to see the line that's going to the school bus as you swim just over it. At night, I have never seen that line at night. I know I've swum right over it, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Just because it's just outside of what your flashlights can reach. But that's typically a night dive, is we have them do the dive during the day, and then that's the dive, especially if they were successful, that's the dive we want them to do at night, just because it does change. It's not the same dive that you did just 5-6 hours earlier when the sun was up.
Right.
Well, once the sun goes down, it's amazing how much more, I find it to be much more enjoyable because it's night. But like that one night dive you and I had, Todd, up there at Dutch, that we were out there forever, and they were like, "Are you guys okay?" We just had a grand old time. It was peaceful. I mean, diving is peaceful to begin with, but it's even more, I find it to be more peaceful and tranquil at night when you can relax. But the dive changes. It very much changes, and the stresses of that dive change. And so that's why we like to do it during the day, do it at night. And most of the students we've had have come back and went, "Holy cow, this dive felt like it was twice as long as it felt during the day," just because of the lack of visibility.
Very cool. Now, Greg, once again, I know how you do a night dive, so go ahead. I won't take your thunder from you.
There's no thunder, so there has been lightning. But,
Yeah.
all right, so for me, typically, it's setting up beforehand, setting them up for success beforehand. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but I like to make sure that they have the proper lights. That's so important for us, because I've seen guys come out and I just got this brand new light and it weighs 30 pounds, and can you show me how to hook it up? Well, we're making sure all lights are bolt snapped, at the end, so so they don't lose them on the ground. Making sure that I came up with this little, Todd, you have probably a bunch of them, tank rings made out of bungee that hold chem sticks in,
Yep.
for markers. And I always found those to be a really good backup, just in case your primary and backup are dead, you at least have a glow stick.
Well, that used to allow the buddy team
I'll be right
that
back.
got separated that had a chance to find
Yeah,
really good.
exactly. The other thing that I would always set up is the shoreline and where they go in and where they go out. With typically it was it was 2 sticks. Actually, I still have them. 2 sticks, and they're the marker sticks that when you go snow plowing at the end of the driveway.
Yep.
2 sticks with the glow sticks attached to them. usually about 5 to 10 feet apart in a straight line out. So you knew if you were, 500 yards offshore, which would be awfully far. Maybe it's like 500 feet, whatever. You could see those lights at night.
Right, and either they'd be lined up or they'd be like this. So
If they're off, you knew that you needed to get in line.
Yep.
Yeah. And that happens like at Stonington. If you're off on that one, then you end up in, a bad area.
Okay, so I don't know. We lost Brian. Brian probably had to go to the bathroom or something. So night dive. Let's go deep dive. And the reason I want to touch on deep dive is because I generally combine a deep dive with a boat dive.
Sure.
So I'm going over, first of all, boat etiquette, how to maintain your stuff, how to keep your stuff neat, how to keep it all together and not tick off the boat captain or the dive master, but also not to damage their boat. Because if you drop a tank, you damage a deck.
Yep.
So I'm gonna take this one first and explain what I do. Once again, going over how to telling them to get a tote. We're gonna start by getting a tote. This is what we're gonna keep all of our gear in. Let's touch and clarify. We are talking about recreational diving. I'm gonna have a bunch of comments from the tech world going, well, you can't fit. Anyway, recreational diving. You keep your equipment neat, tidy, in a tote. You walk on with the tote. You walk on 2 individual tanks if it's a 2-tank dive. And we're learning about boat etiquette and how to respect other people and other people's gear and space. So after that, going over gear setup, not that I go over gear setup because by the advanced open water, they should have it, but I'll go behind them and make sure things are clipped and make sure things are set up and adjusted properly. So that's my boat portion. Brian, I don't know if you missed it. I wanted to touch on deep diving, and I generally combine deep diving with a boat dive because that's how we get deep. So that would be my boat portion of it, as far as keeping track of your gear, keeping your gear neat, tidy, organized, and respecting other people's space, gear, and most of all, the boat captain, the boat crew, and the boat. So give me what you guys do for a deep dive. Don't necessarily go into the details of the dive. What do you generally like to go from the shore, because we can hit 100 and something feet in Jamestown, or you do a boat? What do you guys do? Brian, go ahead.
We have in the past used Cape Ann divers.
Yep.
We've also, before the Gauntlet went strictly tech, we used to use them.
Yep.
So primarily at this point, we're doing shore dives.
Where at? Where at?
Either Jamestown or Dutch Springs.
Okay.
Because Dutch Springs, you can hit 100 feet at Dutch.
Yes.
So, either one. As far as boat diving goes, we do talk about boat etiquette. We don't necessarily push doing it in a tote, but their gear bag, and loading the gear bag in a way that the first thing that comes out of the bag gets put on.
Okay.
So packing it in such a way that when they're loading their bag, the first thing that goes in the bag is the last thing they're going to take out and put on, and doing it in that order. So this way they're showing respect for those that are around them. Being where we are, we don't get a lot of boat diving in for our classes, unfortunately. It's not something that typically happens. We always offer it. Hey, if you want to go, we can head out to you know, up to Gloucester, whatever. There's a couple of cool dives up there. Would be happy to do it with you, as part of the class. In most cases, it doesn't happen. It doesn't pan out. We wind up just doing it, Jamestown or Pennsylvania.
Gotcha.
But
What do you got, Craig?
So, depends. If it's Jamestown, the shore dive, we'll do the far wall. We'll hook into a line, but obviously showing them how to get into the water there is a little challenging.
Now, when you say Jamestown, you're talking about Bull Point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah, because you get some depth there. It takes a little while, so typically what we're doing is we're using a line, tying in and then going out and finding that depth that we're, the indicated depth that we're looking for.
I wonder if they still have that dead lobster trap there.
Huh. Probably not. There's been a few storms since. That was too bad. Actually, there was a couple lobsters actually in there the last time, but that were good size. All right, so if it's a boat dive, it's the same thing. I never really have them set up on the boat. What I typically do is I have them walk on with their gear and their tank, all everything ready.
Yeah.
That's their tank that they're going to use first. That's ready to go. Their gear bag is usually tote. Most of them have totes. I've always been a big fan of totes for me, and for a bunch of reasons, but totes seem to be drier than gear bags when the boat is sopping wet. So we bring them out with a tote, show them the etiquette again, a little bit what to do, what not to do. Prime example, when the boat's going, don't hang your fins in an area that are going to fall out, or your mask that you just bought. It's so expensive, and they happen to the boat's going, I might as well rinse out my mask in the ocean. And that was I didn't do that. My dive buddy did that. And anyway, he lost his, $30 snorkel or whatever and really expensive mask.
Okay, so real quick, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't have the S&P in front of me, but knowing that we teach for different agencies, does your agency require a snorkel on a dive, on an advanced open water dive? Does your agency require a snorkel?
On you.
On you. Okay, Brian, I know now he requires it. Sorry, I didn't mean to mention the agency. But I always keep a snorkel in my pocket. So, I mean, I'm covered that way, but it's less of a snag hazard.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're all on the same page that you do need to have a snorkel on you. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna describe my typical advanced open water dive. We did the boat thing. So now I generally teach, you get in the water, and once again, I don't know if it comes from my technical training or not, but you get in the water, you go to 20 feet, you do a bubble check, you go down the line to the anchor point, you tie a strobe, you do your dive. Generally what I've been in with is we used to do advanced open water dives on the poling. So you get a boat dive, you get a deep dive, and you get introduced to a wreck. Mm-hmm. And I've had a lot of good luck with it, and most students really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason that I tie a strobe on the anchor line, for obvious reasons, on the poling, they actually have two anchor lines. So if you forget where you came down, you're going up the wrong anchor line about 150 feet in the wrong direction. So it's just a thing I do. I put a strobe light. This is the line I came down. This is the line I'm going back up. That's really the reason I teach that, and I emphasize that.
I do the same.
Brian, what do you got?
I will tell you that the strobe wasn't something that I was familiar with until starting a tech course with you. So that is something definitely out of a tech class. But it's a great idea because I can't tell you how many times we've had students pop up on the polling off the wrong line.
I've done it. I'm guilty. I've done it. And then you feel like a fool because you got to surface swim over to the other boat.
Yeah, if there's a boat on that line, yeah, or you're looking at your dive boat going, oh man, do I have enough air to go back down and go the other way? You know, but yeah, that's I love diving the polling. That to me is a great dive. It does have some, I don't want to say challenges to it, but it has enough depth. You're out in the ocean. So there's enough there to make you really think about your diving. It's not mindless diving. You're not just walking in and doop-a-doop-a-doop. You actually need to think about what you're doing. Okay, I'm going down the line. I'm here's where the tie-in point. What's it look like? Am I at the was it the bow or the break? I forget on that, or is it the stern and the break?
Stern and the break.
Stern and the break. You know, am I at the stern or am I at the break? And then doing your dive, and you're going to get chilly. Even in a dry suit, you're going to get cold on that dive. If you have any sort of time down there, you know, so I really enjoy that. And just going over all that with the student before we hop in and saying, look, you know, that this will probably be one of the more challenging dives you've done just because of everything that's in there. Big cloud goes overhead. It's amazing how dark it can get on the polling. You know, it was bright, sunny day up on the boat, and all of a sudden you're looking around, it's like, what happened? Where'd the sun go? You know, but there's a lot of neat things that can be introduced to a student doing that kind of a dive.
So what do you typically? So you already said, excuse me. You already said typically you do your deep dive either at Jamestown or at Dutch Springs.
Right.
So walk me through, I mean, you don't have to walk me through the whole 45-minute dive, but walk me through the steps of your deep dive at Dutch Springs. Greg, we'll do you at Jamestown.
Okay.
So our deep dive at Dutch Springs is generally the deuce and a half.
Greg's playing with the dog.
So one of the things we let them know is, hey, it's going to be a long surface swim. So,
okay, so you guys surface swim out to the deuce and a half.
Out to the deuce and a half because it's a long ways out, and most of our students don't have the breathing reserves,
The sack rate. Yep.
The sack rate to get to the deuce and a half and come back underwater on an aluminum 80.
So
it's too long a dive.
This would be a great whatever the word I'm looking for. This would be a great reason you have a snorkel. Some of them are snorkeling out. Some of them are swimming on their backs.
Yep.
Whatever. This is a great time to have a snorkel.
Oh yeah. Put your snorkel in.
Okay.
Take a compass heading
Yep.
to the buoy and follow your compass and head out.
Perfect.
So
now you get out to the buoy.
Get out to the buoy and we stop. We'll stop 5-10 minutes.
Okay.
Everybody catch your breath. Just because you just had
made you surface swim 200 yards.
Oh yeah. So we'll catch our breath. We'll drop down, which generates about 92-ish feet to the deuce and a half. If you hit 100, it's because you were digging a hole.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, Bert and I were doing that side by side, trying to get deeper. It was funny. We'll spend 3 to 4 minutes.
Yep.
Circling around, and then depending who's leading the dive, if usually Bert will be leading it and I'm following up, or vice versa. We'll take a compass heading off the nose of the deuce and a half and go to the trolley. From the trolley, another compass heading, and we hit a boat. From the boat, there's a line back to the dock, which is at 70 feet.
So
and out.
you're working your way shallower gradually.
Yes.
Okay.
But even still, from the dock, which is at 70 feet, so we've kicked up from 90. We've kicked up the trolley, I think, is at like 60. The boat, I think, is again back down at 80, and then we're back up to 70. And then as we follow the line, we'll leave following the line that's to shore.
Yep.
But we'll keep depth. When we hit the wall, then we'll come up. We'll do our safety and come out. That's a typical deep dive out at Dutch, and that's usually a Sunday morning first dive. Is what we do.
Very cool. Greg, what about you in Bull Point? I've
No,
never
it's a funny
done
one.
that with you.
Oh, you never did? Yeah. So it's a challenging entry because when it's low tide, it's very slippery. When it's high tide, obviously you get a little more depth out of it. It's a little bit easier when it's higher tide, I always thought. So we always talk about going down. We drop down to a little bit of an area. It's in about 30, 40 feet. There's it's right near that lobster pot. Lobster pot was with the buoy, the old buoy was somewhere in the 45-foot range. But we would drop, we'd tie a line, we'd all make sure that we're all around, and it's very small groups. And then we'd make our way out with a line. And then we would do a few little mind skills, whether it's math or a combination lock or something at a certain at a certain depth, just to see how they react to the time. We'll have them do it a few times, then we'll have them do it on land. We'll test it up on land beforehand, see how long it took them to do some simple math or whatever that skill is that we have them do, and then we'll make our way back super slow. Obviously, we'll do a stop. Before we even get into the water, I should back up. The first thing is, and this is throughout kind of the whole course, it's really gas management skills throughout the whole course, talking about, when we do our the search and recovery or any of the navigation courses, we're talking about your consumption rates and how fast or how slow you drain a tank. Rule of thirds, we've always done that from day one, and talked about when we need to turn the dive. So no matter what, I mean, we've always had situations where we've had to turn the dive because the dive was at that third or at the 2/3 mark, and that was it. There wasn't any questions. We never questioned. I mean, maybe a few times when some people would drop into 15 feet of water and they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Then you knew, that they probably weren't meant to be divers. But, we never had a question. Then we always debriefed. The same thing. It was a debrief. What do we do right? What do we do wrong? And everybody, said, there were no mistakes. Whatever they were, it wasn't.
That was perfect.
Learned, So yeah, a lot of deep dive was always fun. For me, the night dive was fun. Was always the last one.
Yep.
I always found that, and it was usually during the week because it was very quiet. There weren't a lot of boats. It was usually on a Wednesday night or something like that. That was how I always did it. And then we went to dinner, and to me that was
everything around you ends in dinner.
Well, you got to eat. You don't get 4 chins for nothing.
So we basically touched on all the required dives, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Brian, what's your favorite? What's your favorite specialty to include in your advanced open water class?
Oh.
That's what I have 2 monitors, so I'm looking over here and I'm just scrolling through one of the pamphlets. So what's your favorite specialty to teach?
I spend so much time just trying to get them through the basics. I happen to really like I enjoy spearfishing and lobstering.
Okay.
Um,
And
So-
there's actually a lot of knowledge that goes behind lobstering. At least I've never gone spearfishing, but
Mm.
lobstering, you have regulations, you have certain things you
do.
have to follow, you have to do, ways to check the lobster. If it's a
Yep.
pregnant female, you don't take it, yada yada yada. So
Yep.
very cool.
Yep.
And Greg, what about you? What's your favorite specialty to teach?
Search and recovery.
Okay.
That is absolutely my favorite.
See, I thought yours would have been collecting because you like doing the bottle thing and everything else. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that to me is search and recovery.
this
That's
is
the same thing, whether it's bottles or coins or something out there. I really enjoy that. That's my favorite. Absolutely.
Mhm.
very good. Do either of you have anything to add? I mean, we touched on all of our topics. We basically went through an advanced open water course. The required dives, you have to do a deep dive, you have to do a night dive, you have to do a search and recovery. I don't have the S&Ps in front of me. Navigation, deep, search and recovery, night. What else?
Yeah, there's a ton of them. Buoyancy, dry suit.
But what you have certain requirements you have to
Yeah, navigation and deep are the two requirements.
for Patty.
Yeah.
Once again, I didn't mean to say that.
Or whatever. Yeah, you always have those.
Okay.
And night.
I know Brian and I have certain requirements. We have to teach this, and this, and then they have 2 elective dives.
Mm.
Same thing. Yeah.
Kind of. Okay.
I don't think I gotta say, even in the advanced course, we never really. It was always the same kind of. I never had somebody say, "I want to learn to spearfish." I hate to say that. Because I'm not a spearfisherman.
Right.
I wish I was a lobsterman, but I just
Right?
I just don't see a lot.
Okay, so that's like photography. Underwater photography is one of the specialties we could do.
Yeah.
I'm not a photographer. I have my GoPro. I can teach you, how to, I guess.
Turn it on.
Well, in a photography course, I'm not a photographer. I've never taught a photography course, but I got to kind of expect that I'm not here to teach you how to take a picture. I'm here to teach you how to take a picture underwater. So how to maintain buoyancy, how to be mindful of if you are standing, because they need stability or whatnot, where you're standing, be environmentally friendly, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe a photography course is teaching them how to play with their camera. I don't know. But just stuff like that.
Mm.
Anyways, anyone got anything to add? No?
Go diving.
Yes, absolutely.
When do you guys get in the water?
Oh, don't start. So every year,
Well, I'm gonna end the broadcast at this point.